We've got these great data sets, but what I tend to say is the data is not the story. The product is the story. You just look at this stent and it looks like it should do the job of stabilizing plaque better than the others. And then the data supports that story.
I'm the one guy that just was like, I don't care to learn TCAR. I think TCAR is carotid artery stenting for dummies.
It is.
The right group of people can make just about anything work, and the wrong group of people can mess up just about anything.
The one procedure where I ask everybody to be very clear, I do a very good timeout, I have no music, it's this procedure.
What CGuard is a very flexible, very open-celled nitinol stent with a finely woven PET mesh on the outside. So it kind of combines what you're looking for from both. Our pore size is much, much smaller than any of the existing stents. You're baiting me into saying something to poke at him, but Miguel's always been a star. He's always stood out.
All right, thanks for not taking the bait.
Please stop. Let's not, but maybe talk a little bit more. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, you're like, oh, stop it. No.
Keep going.
Two vascular surgeons walk into a bar and come out with a podcast. We are talking everything vascular and not. Welcome to the Life of Flow podcast.
The following podcast is not relating to my teachings and work at Del Cedar Medical Center and is for entertainment purposes only.
What's up, Life of Flow family? Today we had a great show with Shane Gleason. Shane is a good buddy of mine for many years, but he's also the Chief Commercial Officer at InspireMD. InspireMD is a phenomenal, interesting company that has some pretty cool technology that's going to hit the carotid market, and I think it's worth your time to listening to his journey and the journey of this fantastic company. Stick around.
Dude, Shane, what a pleasure to have you here. We were talking offline here for the audience out there, trying to remember when we met. And we believe it was back in the maybe 2008 era when I was in Germany. What do you think? Am I here right or?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think it's in the early days or early-ish days anyways of the Link Congress. And, you know, I've been listening to your podcast for a while and heard the story that you had with Eric Sisemski about what you thought was a can of tuna fish. And I think I heard that almost real time or within the first couple of years while you're still over there. So that was a good one to hear back from the archives.
Yeah. What was Miguel like back then, Shane? Do you remember we say? You can be completely honest here.
You're baiting me into saying something to poke at him, but Miguel's always been a star. I mean, he's how many people do you know that follow that path to go over to Leipzig with a surgical background to scrub with angiologists and cardiologists and learn the advanced skills. And I just remember noticing that he was on faculty for the Link meeting while he was still in his vascular training in the US, which I don't know that I can think of anyone else that I could describe that way. So he's always stood out as a star, you know, as a surgeon, but also as someone that was always comfortable around the others, always was, you know, you see people early in their careers that, you know, I'm not trying to date myself, but you see early career people that you're like, that guy or that woman, they're going places. We're going to be all listening to them on the podium or maybe on the podcast. I guess I didn't have that foresight, but someone we're all going to be listening to for a lot of years. So he's always stood out.
All right, thanks for not taking the bait.
Please stop. Let's not, but maybe talk a little bit more. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, you're like, oh, stop it. No.
Keep going.
Yeah.
No. In return for those, and we'll get into who Shane is here shortly, but I've had a fair amount of industry interactions throughout my years, and the people that for me stand out are those that are genuine. And it's hard to be genuine when you're in sales. I feel that you're always coerced in a way by a mission brought to you by a company or an entity. But I feel, Shane, that you're within a small group of people that have remained genuine despite the fact that you've worn maybe some in this 20 years that we've known each other, 3, maybe 4 different jerseys. And genuine and just a cool guy to be around. And somebody that like there's people in the meetings that you look down and try to run away from. He's a guy that I would move, through the room to say hi to, right? Because that's the kind of guy that throughout the years I feel, whether we're doing business directly or not, because you may be on something different, but it's always gravitated towards that, and I feel that you have a very grounding energy, and so anyway, it's a super pleasure to have you here today, man, and welcome to the Life of Flow podcast.
Well, I appreciate it. I feel the same, and I've been looking forward to this for a while. So thanks for having me, Gus.
Awesome.
Well, let's kick it off with a little bit of the Shane journey, if you want. And I know that we have a lot of us really important stuff we need to talk about, but I love always getting a little background. Give me a 60,000-foot view of what you did school-wise, what moved you into this, how'd you end up getting into devices, how specifically into vascular, some of the companies you worked with, and then we can start going a little bit more in depth as to this latest venture you're involved with.
Yeah, happy to. So I went to college to play football and to get an engineering degree. And in maybe the second or third week of classes, I ended up having a microfracture surgery on my left knee. And in the second semester, which is a semester where you choose which concentration you want to choose in the engineering school, I discovered that we had a biomechanical concentration where I went. And I thought, well, if this whole thing's starting to break down already, and biomechanical, that seems a lot more relevant than chemical engineering or, something that you go to do if you're good at math and science in high school and they tell you to go be a chemical engineer. So that was my connection to the medical field. And so throughout the course of schooling, realized that cardiovascular disease is leading killer, stroke, heart attack, vascular disease, leading causes of death and morbidity. I thought those are the biggest problems we have. So that's where there's going to be the most action. There's going to be the most smart people, more change, less static of a field. So that's how I chose that I wanted to be in the cardiovascular field. Much to my dismay, I realized that there weren't entry-level jobs at the time doing the kind of thing that I do today. I knew I didn't want to be an engineer out of school. I wanted to apply it straight to business. So I like to joke that I did what every self-respecting biomechanical engineering student should aspire to do. I sold copiers and faxes in the downtown business district of Washington, D.C. And, I followed some really good advice to go get your Fortune 500 company training, learn a process, learn that selling is a set of professional skills. It's not just showing up and opening your mouth and seeing what falls out of it when you're talking to someone. And the real important lessons of rejection doesn't cause physical pain, things like that, but you learn how to do it.
Shane, I have a question for you. Who
Yeah.
who gave you that advice? Do you remember? Was it one person? Was it a course? Was it a group of people?
You know what? It's I talked to some recruiters at the time, and one that I credit is Joe Mullings, who's
Okay.
still around. Shout out Joe Mullings. But I remember having him in my little my Rolodex of 3x5 cards of contacts. I remember him being one guy saying that, talking to a college kid at this point, and saying, "Go do that. Come back in a year, and we'll get you into medical." And it wasn't actually Joe that placed me that first time, but about a year later, I went to work for Medline selling supplies, where you've got a catalog this thick that's got 20% of your products. And you can be in really any department of a hospital in that job selling supplies. And then I went pretty quickly from there to equipment, and then equipment into devices. And I got myself into the cath lab and the OR with Abbott Vascular at age 27 or so. So kind of moved through those other ones, and that's what I got to. I thought I'd made it into the right space at that point, into the cardiovascular space.
So you were very purposeful about that, because this the other thing is, I don't think that in the years that I've known you, you've ever gone to something that's not CV, right?
I had one sabbatical from cardiovascular, and that
What's your
was
sabbatical? What were you doing? Don't tell me.
it was
Let me guess.
Ortho.
Urology.
Spine.
Urology.
Nope. No,
What'd
it
you do?
was an interventional treatment and ablation treatment for COPD and severe asthma.
Oh,
Think
okay.
renal denervation, but for
Uh-huh.
the airways nerves.
Interesting.
And it's the classic. If it had worked, ... It would have been huge. It was for those.
You would
I
be
used
Mark
to
Zuckerberg now.
joke. Yeah, hopefully there aren't a whole lot of pulmonologists listening to this podcast, but I
They're
learned
not.
better. But I used to
Nobody
joke.
listens to this. There's no doctors that listen to
Yeah.
this, period.
I don't need to worry about anyone hearing this story.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it.
It's
It's just my
just
mom and my sister.
and my wife. No, not even.
Not even.
I used to joke that COPD was an exclusion criterion for one of my trials. If you have COPD, you can't be in my AAA trial. But I learned that COPD is, depending on the year and the numbers, third or fourth leading killer in the U.S. A huge problem. Those patients have a ton of lifestyle impact. And for those patients that we were trying to treat, they have 3 classes of inhaled medications and lung transplant. And there's nothing in here. But yet there's a specialty of interventional pulmonology who was really lacking things that they could do therapeutically to help their patients. So if it had worked, it would have been like launching the stent, the endograft, the PTA catheter, the first real therapeutic interventional treatment for a great big problem. And I went there because they were really looking to implement the cardiovascular playbook. And so I went there as a chief commercial officer, and I like to joke that this may or may not shock you, but if you don't commercialize, you don't really need a chief commercial officer. So after that, I went back into the cardiovascular world, but that's the last 24 years or so. That was the 2 years or so that were outside of cardiovascular.
So one question I have, because the statement still is valid, which is COPD patients still don't have great options. And I know that your company didn't, get a home run. Have you heard of anybody that's been able to disrupt into that?
Yeah, not in a meaningful way for the airways disease patients. That company, I left there 6 or more years ago. I think it's still an ongoing concern, still in clinical trials, trying to get there, but there hasn't been any big splash in that space yet.
All right. So that was your sabbatical, but CV has been at your heart.
Exactly.
So when did you start with this new venture? How long ago? And tell me a little bit about how you got recruited, that process, because I always love it's always a little conversation at a bar, followed by a call, followed by interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah,
How does
A little flirting.
a
little flirting.
going
Yeah,
into a
exactly.
little,
Yeah.
let's get
Yeah.
NDAs, then let's get
Yeah.
a prenup?
Yeah. I'll mention a couple names you guys will know well. So when I mentioned that I got into the cath lab with Abbott Vascular, I was the first product manager in the U.S. For our endovascular business. I got a chance to launch carotid stenting there. I led professional education there where we're doing all of the device certification courses. And then later it was in the global marketing role that I got to meet you first, Miguel. And so I grew up in carotids. I saw the birth of carotid stenting and then the stagnation of carotid stenting when reimbursement never caught up with the indications. Just as an aside, that was back in the day where guys like you were using biliary stents all over the body, and CMS was paying for it. And then we finally had stents that were named after the artery they were supposed to be in. They were indicated for the artery, and CMS didn't open up coverage for it. So that was kind of a surprise to all of us. We all thought that carotid stenting was going to be the next big thing in the late 2000s. And but then with coverage not coming along, it just kind of stagnated. And I've moved on through the vascular world. But about 5 years ago, maybe it was 4 years ago, I was in Kingsport, Tennessee, with our friend Chris Metzger, Dr. Chris Metzger, and we were headed to dinner.
By the way, did you know he's back?
He's back. He's back, baby. He's back, baby.
Where did he go?
He went on to, what was his position? He was like some sort of chair at
Yeah, he had gone up to Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus,
and,
Ohio.
I think home is where the heart is, and he's back in Kingsport. But in any case, I was heading to dinner, and his phone rang, and it was Dr. Christina Brennan, who I knew from her days as research coordinator or head of research at Lenox Hill Hospital. She was calling to set up Dr. Metzger's his site initiation visit for the Sea Guardians trial. He's the U.S. principal investigator of the trial. And Dr. Gary Rubin was coming in, who's actually on our board of directors for his first cases. So I was there when he got that first call about setting that up. And ever since then, he was kind of in my ear about this technology is pretty cool. They're eventually going to reopen the coverage decision. Carotids are going to come back at some point, and this is one of the few companies that's really investing in it or has invested in it in the last decade or so. So I always kind of had my eye on it. And, and then fast forward a couple of years, I was at the Viva meeting and was at dinner with a number of people who were in the early kind of movers and shakers of carotid stenting. And this is November of 22. And they were talking about how CMS was going to reopen the coverage decision. And my first response was, they haven't done that yet? Like, it's really been 13 or 14 years since the last time they'd looked at the coverage decision. Well, they hadn't, but they were about to. And that's what kind of led to the journey of this, where, the timing isn't everything, but it's awfully important. And with reimbursement looking like it's on track to come along, and then finding this company that has a really novel technology and has proven out to have best-in-class data that would be needing someone with kind of my particular set of skills to help bring it to market, it all just kind of lined up.
What do you think? Do you have any insight into what drove CMS to do this change at all? Because it seemed like it was like, okay, I heard this news, coverage is going to get expanded, and I was like, okay, I have no background, no context into why this is happening.
Yeah, it in the 2000s, the first carotid stent was approved in 2004, and then Abbott got one in 2005. And by the end of the decade, all the big cardiovascular companies, Abbott, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, J&J Cordis, all had approved systems. But several times there was a national coverage determination that was opened and reshot without any expansion. And then it was 14 years before they opened it back up. And during that time, there were 4 big randomized trials where the data kind of matured. CREST and ACT-1 being the two big US ones. And what they showed was that carotid stenting and carotid endarterectomy are equally durable procedures. If you look at a composite endpoint of death, stroke, and MI, they're equivalent procedures, and they're equivalent in terms of death and major stroke. But what you always saw in those early trials, those first generation devices, is stenting was associated with more minor strokes, and endarterectomy was associated with more MIs and cranial nerve injuries. And then maybe in the midpoint of the last decade, it was when TCAR came along, trying to thread the needle between the two. Well, we can avoid some of those cranial nerve injuries, but maybe we can also avoid some of those minor strokes because we're not navigating through the arch. And so that's where TCAR came along. And by the way, we have a TCAR program as well. We kind of look at it the same way that CMS does, where TCAR is a form of carotid stenting. Whether you want to deliver that stent through the groin, the wrist, or an incision at the base of the neck, there are all ways of getting a stent to the carotid artery. And so we support and have programs for all of them. But it really was that data matured, and with thousands and thousands of randomized patients, they really are equivalent procedures. When you look at the primary endpoint, there are trade-offs, and that probably makes the different procedures better for different patients. And to just say no asymptomatic patients who get stenting, they should only get endarterectomy, that takes decisions away from people like the two of you and other surgeons and interventionalists that treat patients. And so it really was kind of a lobby of a multi-specialty. They called themselves a multi-specialty carotid alliance that had representation from, if I counted up right, maybe 7 different specialties associated with the treatment of carotid disease. Vascular surgery, interventional cardiology, interventional radiology, the various neurospecialties, vascular medicine, and they all got on the same page and went to CMS and made a really compelling argument that these are equivalent procedures. They're different ones, maybe different for different patients, and it should be the physicians choosing along with their patients who gets what, rather than just a black and white rule that you can only offer this procedure to your patients.
Let me ask you a question. What about it made you think, okay, this is something I want to invest my time and energy in? Because I hear a lot of people when people move. I have recently a friend that was in a company that I've been working with closely move onto another company, and it's like, oh, the technology is really amazing, the pipeline's really amazing, and I'm just always curious, like from your perspective, because my perspective might be completely different, and my perspective is probably usually wrong. But for you, like, what was it where it's like, okay, this is really exciting?
Yeah, so some good advice I got early in my career, something that always stuck in there was when looking at opportunities, whether you're an investor or whether you're looking for your own employment, is the three T's. And in this order: timing, team, technology. I think sometimes people get a little excited about the last one. They see a sexy technology and they get excited about that, but if the timing isn't right, carotid stenting 15 years ago, for example, if you've got the wrong team, those things won't go well. I'm a big believer that the right group of people can make just about anything work, and the wrong group of people can mess up just about anything. So with this one, the timing with, there's never been a better time to be launching an innovative new carotid stenting product. The team, I'm in early enough that I get to help build it, and that's something that I really, really enjoy. And then the fact that we really have a differentiated product with best-in-class data makes it kind of the hat trick there.
It's interesting. What do you think? Because I think that for me, the way I think about carotid stenting is in the asymptomatic patient, and I do TCAR mostly, and I do TCAR usually awake with just regional block, because I do think that there's multiple benefits to not having general anesthesia, time, monitoring, like decrease the number of variables that you control. I feel like I'm more in control of it. So for asymptomatic patients, I think that as long as the criteria are there, the calcium's not crazy, you have enough of a common carotid that's healthy, I think TCAR is equivalent, or or might be better. But then when you have symptomatic patients, I don't do stenting, or I try to avoid stenting as much as I can, because when you've opened these plaques, you see that a lot of the time it's liquefied plaque. It's not just it's soft plaque. Some of the times it's just pure liquid. And you can easily imagine that just shooting up to the brain and causing a stroke. So I did look at some of the results in your trial, and they're pretty impressive. I think you had like 300 something patients. 25% were symptomatic, and your stroke rate on that, I think, was just 2 out of, I think, 20. I guess that would be 75 if it's 25% or about there. So I think that's super interesting. And if it pans out, in the data, I think it's a game changer. And I could see just like TCARing way more. What do you think about carotids, Miguel? Are you doing many now in your current practice?
I mean, I continue to be the transfemoral guy, funny
Yeah.
enough, right? I trained in very complex advanced transfemoral techniques. And I'm the one guy that just was like, I don't care to learn TCAR. I think TCAR is carotid artery stenting for dummies.
It is.
And so I'm like, it takes the art of navigation, of placement, of all this away. Rightfully so. Okay. It was just not for me.
Yeah.
And I kind of stayed away from it. And anytime I thought a patient would benefit from it, I would send it to the person that would do TCARs. So for me, all this is great news, right? When I see refurbishment of transfemoral indications, when I see all of a sudden frothy investment, company-driven opportunities, advancement in technologies, that's how we move the needle. That's how things get better, right? When you suck the wind out of reimbursement, then everything stagnates. There's not going to be any evolution if there's no payment structures, right? We've had multiple entrepreneur shows here in the past. It's the team, it's the idea, to your point, You said what was team, time, and technology. I'd say add a fourth T, which is the payment. Because if there's no payment,
Yeah.
none of that. It doesn't
It
matter
doesn't
if
go
it's
anywhere.
like
Yeah.
the best set of people with the set. It's gonna die on
In the vine. Yeah.
right there. And so I'm very excited about this. What I would say is I think from an organizational structure for our audience, shouldn't we at least set the stage on what we're talking about? Because we're going into
Oh,
the
so that, yeah,
like we haven't even
famous
talked about
already.
the technology because I want to.
Yeah.
Why is it that this is important? So Shane, walk us through. Let's start with what are we talking about? What is this company bringing to the table? What is so novel? What is so potentially disruptive? Why potentially, to Lucas's point, the data may be better? What is it that is inherent to this transfemoral or trans TCAR technology offering? And then I'd love to go into like who came up with the idea and what do you know about the inceptions of the company? But maybe start with saying what is this stent and what's so special about it?
Yeah, so I work for a company called InspireMD, which is obviously not a household name yet. We have a product called CGuard. The CGuard carotid stent system has had CE mark, or the CGuard embolic prevention system, as it's labeled outside of the U.S., has had CE mark since 2015. And what it is we're all familiar with various stent designs, and there's typically a trade-off. In the carotids, you can have an open-celled stent that tends to be more flexible and conformable, but have larger open cells and therefore provide less scaffolding, especially in those really scary lesions like you're describing, Lucas. And or you can use a closed cell stent, which is going to have better scaffolding, but it's going to have typically more metal, be less flexible, less conformable. So there are always trade-offs.
Very hard to get up the bifurcate. I mean, the when you're that's one of the biggest problems. Like if you go, if you talk to old school dudes like me or Chris, and we were trying to push a wall stent through that really, really hard, if you had a
Type 3.
hard carotid offtake, you would have to trade off, to your point, right? You would have to say, okay, I need the open cell design that will navigate this. And I will lose potentially on, right, on radial force, on maybe strut protection. So this is really important especially when you're talking about transfemoral stenting. I don't think it's that important for TCAR.
No, for TCAR, it's just a straight shot. I mean, TCAR is stenting for dummies. It is beautiful.
I'll defend TCAR a little bit. It's not just stenting for dummies. I think there's some real strong advantages to it as well. But
Yeah.
mention the trade-offs.
There are advantages, but
Yep.
there's very little skill.
But if you have a metallic implant and you're using nitinol and it's a laser cut tube, you've got those trade-offs. Do I want more conformability and less coverage, or do I want less conformability and more coverage? And what CGuard is a very flexible, very open-celled nitinol stent with a finely woven PET mesh on the outside. So it kind of combines what you're looking for from both. It's as flexible and conformable as any of the open-celled stents, but with this woven mesh that's on the outside of the stent, our cell size or pore size is much, much smaller than any of the existing stents. Our average cell size is 150 to 180 microns. The other ones tend to measure theirs in millimeters, not microns, in terms of the size of the pores. So without sacrificing conformability and ability to conform to the lesion, we're getting more advanced scaffolding than you'd get from any of the others. So when you just look at it, understanding that the reason we stent carotids is to stabilize plaque and prevent it from prolapsing through the stent struts, breaking off, and causing a stroke. That's the job of a carotid stent. If you're putting a stent elsewhere in the body, we tend to be treating occlusive disease, as you guys know. Here we're treating embolic disease. So the whole purpose in life of a carotid stent is to stabilize plaque and prevent it from cheese grating through and breaking off and going the only direction it's going to go and causing a stroke. So here we have this implant that's got this really finely woven mesh that helps prevent that. And one of the cool things I mentioned is had CE mark, or this implant has had CE mark for about 10 years. We sold over 65,000 stents outside of the US before our approval. And we have well over 1,000 patients that are in the published peer-reviewed literature. that show best-in-class data, that show 30-day event rates, death, stroke, and MI around 1%, and 1-year event rates around 2%, just kind of blended across all the studies there. So then when we ran the C-Guardians trial, and that's your carefully controlled, IDE trial in the US, we had some European sites as well. With the 316 patients that you mentioned earlier, we had a 0.95% 30-day event rate and a 1.93% 1-year event rate. So the real world evidence and the pivotal trial evidence are strikingly similar. And, so we've got these great data sets, but what I tend to say is the data is not the story. The product is the story. You just look at this stent and it looks like it should do the job of stabilizing plaque better than the others. And then the data supports that story. Because, if we just go out and lead with it's just about the data, there's always going to be the questions of, well, which patients did you really treat? Were you grading your own work? How heavily scrutinized were those? All those things. Because, we also all know people that can't remember their last stroke, right? So they'll look at this and go, well, I must not have a problem. I must not need your implant. But if we really start with, no matter how effective your procedure is, no matter how effective that, the flow reversal during your TCAR is, that when you're done with the procedure, the only thing left protecting your patient's brain is the implant you leave behind, that this device just makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
I've been doing this for years, right? We went through that already. Thanks for making me old. But still today, I don't know if you remember this, but the one procedure where I asked everybody to be very clear, I do a very good timeout. I have no music. I don't do carotids unless it's a tech that I've done carotids with before.
Yeah, that's what
It's this procedure.
This is why you need to do TCAR.
Okay, well, I'm happy to say that I'm very respectful of the procedure because you have a little complication on a leg, you're like, okay, I'll come tomorrow and fix it. You have a complication in the brain, bro. You got no time, right?
Yep, that's done.
And so I will sweat every single time. It doesn't matter how many I've done. I've done hundreds, if not maybe thousands at this point. It always gets me. And I guess I'm just saying that even though that I look back and I've been, lucky enough, technically savvy enough to have a pretty good track record. It's one of those that if you show me a better way, if you show me a safer way, it doesn't really matter how many I've done or how great my results have been. I am, at least, and this is a very personal stance, I will 100% take your better technology.
100%.
If it's going to give me another level of safety, right? I mean, it's like, hey, there's 2 cars. One's got seatbelts, one doesn't. Do you need a randomized control study for that, you dumb wit, right? I mean, of course not, right? You use the one that's safer. It's not your life, it's your patient's life.
Yeah.
For me, it's just nonsensical. And I think that if the data supports good quality, I would say if the ergonomics of the device, I unfortunately haven't had the chance to play with it, Shane. I would love to do it.
Seems like a very standard.
But if the ergonomics are right, if the maneuverability is right, if the sizing is right, I think you have an absolute winner on your hands because there's no good reason for somebody to say, hey, there's a safer stent. Would you use it? No, I don't need it. Well, you have to be very careful because the moment you have a stroke and you say you went on the record saying that I don't need the safer stent, you could get in trouble. So I don't know. I just feel that it's a pretty logical thing to do.
Okay, can we talk about that, Shane? Because I feel like physicians are not always logical when they choose things to do or like how to implement new things. I find physicians not logical at all.
At all. Overly emotional.
Yeah, they like their thing and they've done it for 20 years and it doesn't matter if your like stent is like a beautiful I think it's a beautiful stent just looking at it. But it works.
How do you get somebody to change their ways?
How do you get somebody to change their ways if they've been like 20 years in practice and say my stroke rates are nothing,
One other thought on that, and I agree with everything the two of you are saying. Question, Miguel: when you do your CAS procedures, Do you still have them squeeze the duck? You have a squeaky toy in the other hand?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to bring it myself
Mm-hmm.
because the Joint Commission doesn't fucking like the squeakies.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They took them all out.
No way.
Yeah, I bring my own fucking chicken.
So one of the things, I mean, with our stent, it obviously, as soon as it's in there, it's providing that protection, but it's really the lasting protection that the lasting protection that we point to. You know, I put it a little bit casually, but the patient doesn't usually drop the duck. The events don't usually happen right there on the table. If you look at any of the big databases, any of the big post-approval studies, they all show that 2/3 to 3/4 of the events happen once the patient's off the table, because there's probably something kind of flapping in the breeze there that it's, whether it's in recovery a day later, a week, or a month later, that's when the events can happen. So we kind of point to that lasting protection that mesh gives you, that no matter how effectively you perform the procedure, having that lasting protection in there is important.
Now, on the front end, Shane, it's a mechanical protection, right? You've got struts, you've got mesh. You're essentially avoiding cheese grating.
What's
right?
the mesh made out of?
But sorry, just quick, and then go into the mesh conformity. But in the long run, what happens to the inside, like on histology? Do you get a nice thin endothelial layer without too much of an aggressive intimal hyperplasia? Does the mesh change that ISR that you normally see in these stents? Because in general, carotid stents do good long term. Like, it's not an artery that has a lot of ISR anyway. But what's the ISR within these chronic implants?
Yeah, it's a large lumen vessel with high flow rates. You don't expect to see a high restenosis rate. That's actually something we see as an advantage of our product. Our 1-year TLR rate was 1% in our trial. It was 3. And one of the reasons we think we get that is, starting with your question about histology, the PET mesh fiber, it's a single fiber that's woven into a mesh like a sock, and that goes on the outside of the self-expanding implant. And we've got some beautiful images on our website. Maybe I'll shout out seaguardprime.com or inspiremd.com. We'll take you to pictures.
As of now, our team will put this
We'll
in.
put it in.
So
We'll
we
inlay
need
it,
those videos so that we can embed them, because it would be very strong to have that come in.
Awesome. So the mesh itself is woven out of a single fiber, 20 micron diameter fiber of PET. It's woven into a mesh like a sock that goes on the outside of the self-expanding stent. So that tells you a couple of things. One, stent struts are between 100 and 200 microns in thickness. So when you look at the relative size of the PET mesh at a 20 micron diameter, it's tiny in comparison to the stent strut. And because it's on the outside of the stent, it's pressed against the vessel wall. So there's really no way that a metallic stent could endothelialize and have this PET mesh inhibit that in any way. So from an endothelialization, from a dual antiplatelet therapy standpoint, we have the same dual antiplatelet therapy recommendations that any of the more traditional stents do. Sometimes that's a question people have. They say, dual layer, do I need longer DAPT? And the answer is no.
What does PET stand for?
You're going to challenge me here. Polyethylene tetrathalate, I believe, is the.
It's a thread. It's a
Like PTFE.
Is it like a PTFE?
It's
material?
a relative of
like a cousin.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I mentioned my engineering degree. It's been a long time since I took a chemistry class, but a pretty close relative to Dacron or PTFE. Other materials that we use in grafts.
Does your reps or whatever go around when they're selling, showing the stent? Is there a show and tell, meaning can I see it? Can I feel it?
I'm sure they
Is it very clear? Do you have one? Bring it close to the screen. Show me what you got, Shane.
Here you go. All right, there's our stent, so you can see
it's like wrapped. It's like
it's a flexible open-celled stent, but if you look very closely, you can see in between the stent struts, you can see kind of a shimmer.
Yep.
It's like a Thai egg roll.
Exactly right.
Those that have like
a very
really thin thing?
kind of shimmery. It's like a woven sock that's on the outside of it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can see a
expect
little
to
bit better at the ends where you can
Listen,
see.
I could have said something worse.
You could have said something worse.
Thank you.
Do you expect
There
to
you
see a
go.
difference between transfemoral and TCAR? Because based on those numbers, I mean, your effect size is going to be pretty low. So you're probably going to have a just shit ton of TCAR cases to show a difference.
Yeah. I think there's never been a randomized trial in that area, so I won't touch that one. But I will say in the CAS trials, there's a pretty well-worn path to what those look like. They'll have similar inclusion-exclusion criteria. They all have the same death, stroke, and MI at 30 days, plus ipsilateral stroke out to a year, primary endpoints. TCAR, if you look at the Roadster studies, those tended to focus on the 30-day endpoints because they were using already approved stents, and it was really just the safety profile of the procedure, of the flow reversal of the transcarotid procedure. So I mentioned C-Guardians. 1-year results have been presented, submitted for publication. That's what led to our approval in June. We're doing 2 more trials. Second one is called C-Guardians 2, and that is our stent with the en route NPS. So using our stent in a shorter delivery system with the commercially available TCAR system. And then at the conclusion of that, we'll go into C-Guardians 3, which is our stent and our own neuroprotection system, our own flow reversal kit, which we call SwitchGuard. So both of those are smaller trials than the first one because we're able to leverage all the implant data from C-Guardians. So we're really looking primarily at the 30-day endpoints.
Shane, this is a transfemoral flow reversal or a
Transcarotid.
transcarotid flow reversal system? What are you?
Those are transcarotid.
Transcarotid.
So those are
there's
the
a
TCAR
transfemoral
procedure that you're familiar with, just putting a
sounds-
different implant in the procedure.
Have you ever done MoMA?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have one of those nasty symptomatic ones.
Yeah.
You know what I do?
What?
Double up, baby. MoMA and a filter.
I mean, yeah.
Get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. I can see that.
But anyway,
Yeah, and MoMA offers a lot of the same things that TCAR does, right? Where the advantage is there with TCAR, obviously you take all of any tortuosity of the anatomy out of the equation, but you also don't have to cross the lesion unprotected. Reversing flow, you're not crossing the lesion unprotected.
Yeah.
MoMA offers the same thing. Some of the newer balloon guides that are used that have been popularized in the neurointerventional space for some of the stroke thrombectomy that's being done, that offers a similar approach of being able to provide some level of protection before you even cross the lesion. Because, this won't protect you until it's in there.
so Shane, for anybody out there that's like, shit, this sounds like something I want to have. Like you're approved CE mark, you've sold a shit ton over there. You've got US FDA approval now. So are you commercializing? Do you have a big team? Like what I know that you're heavy on the on VP sales positions in your past areas. Is that what you're currently focusing on now? Like what are you going to do with your sales? What's the plan?
Yeah. So I lead our commercial organization. So in the US, we've started to build our team. We had a small team that was on board and trained at the time of our approval. And I guess what we've stated at this point is that we've got a commercial organization in the US, a little bit north of 20 people. Most of them are in the field. And one of the cool things about recruiting in this area is the same reasons that I'm here apply to a bunch of other people that have supported carotids in their careers. It's everything you described about the procedure of you needing to have your A game when you go into it. Reps feel the same way. And it becomes the favorite procedure to support for a lot of really good professionals in this space because it's a procedure that they can make a difference. They can add value versus some of the more commoditized things out there. So we've been able to attract a really, really strong team thus far. Everyone has some combination of CAS, TCAR, and or neurovascular experience. Many of them have 2 or even all 3 of those call points and therapeutic backgrounds. So we're building the team now, and we've been selling outside of the U.S. through a distributor network in about 30 countries for years. But in the U.S., we just started building. We got approval the last week of June, started doing cases in July, and hopefully coming soon to OR or interventional suite near you.
There you go.
So you've been in other areas of the market like aortic interventions where some very strong European companies have failed miserably at penetrating the US market in the past. Based on your experience of that, how do you foresee you guys avoiding this being a very costly effort that ends with a marginal return on investment and then a flop? Because obviously that's what nobody wants, but you've been there and it's happened. And not not one person, not two people, but big institutions with lots of employees, and lots of smart people, and it's not easy. So what's your thoughts on what's gonna make you stealthy and potentially achieve your goal here?
It sure helps when you have something that people really want. And when you said, "Hey, this I haven't used it yet, but it seems like a no-brainer,"
Yeah.
that if it
Is that your categorically your response over and over again, probably?
yeah, yeah, and, people look at it and, I've gotten the response many times, "I've been waiting for this or something just like it for 20 years." Or, "I've been asking for this since I started treating carotids," or, why hasn't someone done this sooner?" And it's fun for me, having grown up at Abbott, that I can tell you exactly why we didn't. I used to show PowerPoint slides that had a next generation closed cell stent and then a next generation idea that looked an awful lot like this. It was putting a permeable membrane or a mesh on the outside of a self-expanding stent, but we never invested in it because the market didn't develop. And now we've got this, lots of times innovation comes from small companies. We've got this small company that stuck to it, all along the way. And so, first and foremost, people want it and they see the benefit in it. But I also say that, it's never been easier for hospitals to keep industry professionals out or to keep new products out. So if we hire a team that doesn't have access, that doesn't know how to navigate those processes, and we wait at the back of the line for every VAC approval, it'll be just like you're describing, Miguel, one of those very typical, not too exciting launches. So what we've really hired for is people like the two of you want to work with and that are going to add value in your cases and that know how to launch products and know how to navigate the system so they can actually make it available to the people that want to use it. And that's what we think is kind of the secret sauce, where Silk Road did a lot of amazing things. They're no longer a standalone company. We are the only company that's singularly focused on the treatment of carotid disease. And we've got a really strong team that's growing, every month, that is singularly focused on doing that, finding the people that most want to use this device and figuring out how to get it into their hands so they can use it.
What are the chances somebody buys you out in the next 2 years?
I get that question a lot. We are a publicly traded company. We're listed on the NASDAQ. We actually got a chance to ring the closing bell about a month ago, which was very cool. It's a service that NASDAQ has for companies. We're an innovative company that they think represents them well. So we got a chance to go to Times Square and do that. But it does seem like the type of device that a lot of big companies could benefit from. But we also think that we're building it today. We're financed. We've raised a lot of money. We're financed to do this on our own. And at the end of the day, I think most companies are bought; they're not sold. So if we have as much success as we hope to in bringing this to folks like you and your patients, then we hope there'll be a lot of interest. But because we're well financed, we're not in a position where we need for that to happen for us to survive or thrive.
You keep calling it a small company, and I find that interesting because you've got sales in over 40 countries in the world. You've got CE marked and have sold hundreds, if not thousands, of these devices. You're publicly traded and well funded. That doesn't sound like a small company to
Yeah,
me.
maybe it's the little guy chip on your shoulder, huh? The chip on my shoulder. But it's we're a U.S. startup. This is a commercial startup. When I started, we didn't have anything in the U.S. We didn't have an office. We didn't have any of the systems that you need. We didn't have any boots on the ground. We sell in all those countries around the world. we have an 8-person commercial team outside of the U.S. that manages our network of distributors. So a pretty small team, relative to the big companies we're competing with. And, maybe it's a lot of it is spirit. I guess we are in the 100 employee or so range now, including the people that actually physically build the product. So, relative to a lot of the companies you see every day, we are still small.
Well, Shane, I'll say this with whatever perspective and depth I have by knowing you and with what you've shared today, this seems like an incredibly fitting project for you. I think that you bring huge value to the table with your acumen, with your own personal professional acumens. But I also think that you, to your point, the triple T, you chose right, and you are backing something that's very exciting. And I know a lot of people are going to be very, very interested in learning a little bit more about this. Maybe tickled about connecting with this novel growing representative team that you're putting together. So, any big meetings they should be looking at, or any, should they go to the website? Where would you direct anybody that right now is driving in their car saying, fuck, I want this stent in my hospital. What do I do?
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And I appreciate everything you just said there. I'd say, for anyone listening that knows me, reach out. My number hasn't changed in 20 years. But
we'll put it in the comments.
Aside from that,
you'll get a lot of hate.
Let's not.
Aside from that, our website, InspireMD.com, we have a page that will take you right to the product information, and seaguardprime.com. We will be at the fall congresses. My team's at New England Vascular right now. We're hitting some of the regional ones. We'll be doing the TCT, Viva, VEITH, SVIN swing in the last week of October through November. And our goal is to get out there and make people aware. And back to the people that we're trying to hire and recruit. I had this conversation with Lucas a couple of months ago at a conference where, InspireMD is not a household name. And Seaguard Prime is not a product that everyone has heard of or knows that they need yet. So if we hire the wrong people that can't get access or that you don't want to work with to represent a company you haven't heard of with a product you don't know you need, that's the wrong formula. So hiring the right people that, you mentioned jerseys earlier. I say it all the time. It's people don't recognize the name on the front of our jersey yet. So we're recruiting a team of people who you'll recognize the name on the back of their jerseys. So keep your eyes on LinkedIn.
Once you're on the Life of Flow podcast,
the
limit,
Life of Flow bump.
It's like Toy Story, Infinity and Beyond.
Love it.
Okay, I was like, where are you going with that?
Well, listen, I want to be respectful of your time. We asked for 1 hour, and 1 hour is up. And just very, I feel profound gratitude for this moment, for the time you've shared with us.
As do I.
The lights remain on anytime, any fun, any cool stuff that comes down the line, any data drop you want to share with us, reach out. We'll do another show. You want to bring some other people? Let's get Chris in here.
Love it.
Chris could be a fun guy to talk to because I'd love to know a little bit about how that first trial went. The tribulations that always come with these studies are very interesting. And we could look at some of the other more nitty-gritty stuff.
Love to.
Yeah. Thanks, Shane. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you
All
guys.
right, brother. God bless you. Thank
Keep
you
up
very
the good
much
work.
for your time.
Thank you.